Starting with the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the next lecture, lecture 3 of English literature. Today we are going to discuss about the difference between a play, drama, and a novel, and background of the play, then plot and its components, and finally we will discuss about the characters of the play. Difference between a novel and a play. Play or drama is composed in verse or prose, usually for theatrical performances, television and film, where conflicts and emotions are expressed through dialogue and actions. Novel. It's a work of prose fiction, a full-length story longer than a novella. Now, novella means a novelette, means short novel or a long story. It is not written to be performed, and there are no dialogues in the novel. Okay, so here starts the background of the play The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. Title The Merchant of Venice pertains to the lead character Antonio, who is a merchant in Venice. The title suggests the conditions which form the background of the plot as a whole. Shakespeare's source for The Merchant of Venice may have been an Italian tale called The Simpleton. Genre, it's comedy. Basically, it is not a pure comedy, it is a tragicomic play, which means mingling of gay and serious. Tragicomedy is a play with double action and double ending. It has both the serious plot and comic plot. That is the reason it is also called a problem play, because for some characters the ending was happy, and for one character, that was of Shylock, the ending was sad. There are 5 acts and 20 scenes in the play. The setting is Venice and Belmont in Italy. It is a 16th century Renaissance reign of Elizabeth I play, and is written between 1596 and 1599. The society was Judophobic. Anti-Semitism was there. Judophobic means disliking Jews or an attitude towards the Jews. Anti-Semitism was common in Europe in Shakespeare's days. Religion was Christianity. Basically, Judaism and Christianity were not just religions in the 16th century. They were constructed as racial and national identities as well. Jews were not allowed to move freely. The play Merchant of Venice famously dramatizes 16th century racial stereotypes. There is no doubt that the play depicts anti-Semitism, hatred for Jews. The play has historical background with regard to its characterization. As heroines of that time of 16th century, they resemble Queen Elizabeth. They were tall and fair. And the inferior characters, they resemble her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots, and they were short and dark. Plot. In literary work, film, story or other narrative, the plot is the sequence of events where each affects the next one through the principle of cause and effect. The different components of the plot, starting from exposition, beginning, then rising action, climax, then falling action, and finally the resolution or denouement. Exposition or the beginning is the start of the story, the place and situation before the action starts. Then point number 2 or the second component of the plot is rising action. The series of conflicts and crises that leads to the climax of the story is its rising action. Then finally, the story reaches its climax. Climax is the highest point of tension in a narrative's plot. The phrase climax is derived from the Greek word climax, Klimax, climax, which means ladder. Reading a story is just like climbing a ladder with the climax at the top. The fourth component of the plot is falling action. It is the part of the plot that follows the climax. It is followed by climax. It takes the drama towards the end. The story begins to slow down and work towards its end, tying up loose ends of the plot. Number fifth component of the plot is resolution, denouement, which is resolution, which is also known as denouement. The resolution is when conflicts are resolved and the story concludes. Okay, while talking about the plot of The Merchant of Venice, it faces different crises while approaching towards the climax. The exposition of The Merchant of Venice is when Antonio, at the beginning of the story or the plot, Antonio borrows money so that Bassanio, his friend, can court Portia. Then it has different steps, different crises, like Antonio offers Shylock a pound of flesh as collateral. Then suitors try to solve Portia's father's riddle to marry her. Number 4, Bassanio solves the riddle and marries Portia. Number 5, Antonio cannot repay Shylock, who demands his pound of flesh. Number 6, disguised as a man, Portia goes to Venice to help Antonio. Climax. Portia saves Antonio at trial scene. Shylock loses his fortune. Portia tricks Bassanio into giving her his wedding ring. Now, the story is slowly and gradually moving towards the resolution. This is the falling action where Portia tricks Bassanio into giving her his wedding ring. And finally, the story reaches towards its end, where Portia reveals her disguise and returns Bassanio's ring. So there is not only one plot in The Merchant of Venice, but there are many other plots, the subplots. The main plot is the Bond story, and there are 3 other plots in the story. Number 1, which are the subplots. Number 1, the casket story. Number 2, Lorenzo and Jessica story. The ring story. Then, other than this, there are important scenes in the play. Number 1 is the trial scene. Number 2 is Portia's speech. Number 3, Shylock's speech. Portia's speech of mercy and Shylock's revenge speech. Okay, so moving on to the characters. The very first character is of Antonio, who is a Venetian merchant, the title character of the play. He borrows 3,000 ducats from his rival, the Jewish moneylender Shylock, on behalf of his friend Bassanio. Antonio's own money is tied up in his ships at sea, so he accepts Shylock's demand of a pound of Antonio's own flesh as a collateral, as a guarantee for the loan, reflecting his confidence that he will be able to repay Shylock. When Antonio's ships are temporarily lost, he cannot repay the 3,000 ducats back to Shylock, and Shylock finally demands the pound of flesh. When the dispute goes to court, Antonio ultimately prevails. His life is spared and his fortune is restored when the lost ships return to port. Next character is the character of Bassanio. Bassanio is Antonio's friend who needs money so he can court the wealthy heiress Portia, a woman famous. Bassanio is Antonio's friend who needs money so he can court the wealthy heiress Portia, a woman famed for her wealth, wisdom, and beauty. Bassanio has squandered his own fortune. He has wasted his own fortune as he was a spendthrift and is in debt to Antonio and others. But Antonio cares deeply for Bassanio because he was his best friend and does not refuse the request. Bassanio is successful in his courtship and marries Portia, but he returns to Venice shortly after they are wed to support Antonio in his time of need. Portia, the beauty of the play. Portia is wealthy heiress who lives at Belmont, an estate near Venice. Her father has died and he devises a riddle involving 3 boxes of gold, silver, and lead to help her choose a worthy husband. The suitors must choose between the 3 boxes to find a portrait of Portia. The man who chooses correctly wins her hand. Portia is lucky enough to have the man she loves, Bassanio. Bassanio wins this challenge and they get married. When she learns of Antonio's troubles in Venice, she disguises herself as a young man named Balthazar and presents herself at court as a legal scholar. Her reading of the contract and her cleverness allow her to help Antonio go free. Gratiano. Gratiano is Bassanio's close friend who accompanies him to Portia's estate, Belmont, to offer moral support as Bassanio attempts to woo Portia. Gratiano shows great humor and fierce loyalty to Bassanio, a loyalty he also shows for Antonio during Antonio's trial, as all 3 were very good friends. Gratiano, Antonio, and Bassanio were very good friends. At Belmont, Gratiano notices Portia's lady in waiting, Marisa, and marries her. Nerissa was Portia's waiting gentlewoman. Nerissa is part servant, part advisor, and part best friend of Portia. She advises and encourages Portia when Portia is frustrated by the suitors who swarm, who overcrowd her home, seeking her hand in marriage. She also disguises herself as a man and accompanies Portia to Venice when Portia goes there to defend Antonio. Nerissa is distinguished by her strong common sense and good judgment. Okay, so students, this is not all about the characters. We have discussed today the 5 characters. We were able to discuss about the 5 characters in today's lecture. We will inshallah continue it in the next lecture with the discussion of the first 5 characters of the play. We stop here until the next session, and I will assign you your today's assignment, and the date for the submission of this assignment would be next Monday, that is 30th of June. And the assignment is related to, you have to differentiate between a play and a novel and describe the different types of play or drama. Hope everything is clear to you. Kindly note every point in your notebooks. Very thoroughly go through the lecture once again. If you face any problem, feel free to contact me. Stay happy and stay safe. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.